Right now, there are things living miles beneath you that we cannot name, sounds recorded in the deep sea that no one can explain, and ships found perfectly intact, with food still warm on the table, and not a single soul on board. Welcome to Obscura Files. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss where this one goes. Less than 5% of Earth's oceans have ever been explored. 5%. A NASA scientist once admitted it's actually easier to send a human into space than to the bottom of the sea. Today, we're going through the full iceberg, from the stuff you've probably heard of, all the way down to the things that will genuinely make you question what's hiding beneath the surface. The deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Let's start. In 1997, researchers monitoring underwater microphones in the remote Pacific Ocean picked up something they had never heard before. A low-frequency, extraordinarily powerful sound that lasted approximately 1 minute and originated near the deepest point on Earth, the Mariana Trench. They called it the Bloop. It wasn't a click or a ping. It was a deep, resonant, scraping kind of rumble. The kind of sound that when you hear it, you immediately want to know what made it. Scientists later proposed that rapid freezing and cracking of Antarctic ice sheets could explain it. That's the official, accepted theory. But others weren't so sure, because the sound's profile, its shape, its frequency, its sheer power resembled something biological, something alive, something potentially enormous. No animal has ever been confirmed as the source. The Bloop remains officially unexplained. Speaking of enormous living things, let's talk about giant squid. These animals are real.
They're not mythology, not legend. They exist in every ocean on Earth, preferring the cold darkness of the deep. And they are genuinely massive. Documented specimens have reached lengths of up to 13 meters, from the tip of the mantle to the end of the longest tentacle. That makes them the longest invertebrates ever recorded. And yet, for most of human history, we had almost no footage of them alive in their natural habitat. We knew they existed because sperm whales would wash ashore with circular sucker scars on their skin, enormous ones. Evidence of battles fought in total darkness, hundreds of meters below the surface. The giant squid is real, enormous, and almost completely unknown. That combination has fed centuries of legend, which brings us to something a little less scientific. The Kraken. If you've grown up anywhere in the Western world, you've heard the name. In Scandinavian maritime tradition, the Kraken was described as a colossal sea monster, part squid, part nightmare, capable of wrapping its arms around entire ships and pulling them under. Sailors reported it, artists painted it, poets wrote about it. There's no scientific evidence that a creature matching the Kraken's mythological description has ever existed. But consider this. People were reporting encounters with something massive, tentacled, and terrifying for centuries before science formally acknowledged that giant squid were real. At what point does a legend stop being just a legend? Now, while we're talking about things in the ocean that can kill you, let's address rogue waves. For most of maritime history, oceanographers considered rogue waves, enormous, isolated walls of water rising suddenly out of a calm sea, to be sailor folklore, old men exaggerating.
Then, on New Year's Day 1995, instruments at the Draupner oil platform off the coast of Norway recorded one in real time. A wave roughly 26 meters high, nearly the height of a 9-story building, appearing out of nowhere in conditions that should have produced waves of roughly 12 meters at most. Since then, satellites have confirmed they exist with disturbing regularity. Some reach 30 meters or more. They appear with almost no warning, and the physics of why they form, whether it's the collision of ocean currents, sudden changes in underwater depth, or the reinforcement of multiple wave patterns, is still not fully understood. Dozens of ships that have disappeared without explanation over the past century may have simply met one of these walls of water. No mayday signal, no survivors, just gone. Before we keep going deeper, I want to stop here for a second. We're going to cover some genuinely strange things in this video. Sounds, structures, creatures, disappearances, and I want to know, which of these ocean mysteries do you personally think will eventually be explained by science, and which ones do you think will stay unsolved forever? Drop your answer in the comments. I read all of them. Now, the Megalodon. Roughly 23 to 3 million years ago, a shark existed that makes the modern great white look like something you'd keep in an aquarium. Conservative estimates put the Megalodon at somewhere between 15 and 20 meters in length. Some analyses suggest it could have been larger. Its teeth, which are the primary fossil evidence we have, are the size of a human hand. It's officially extinct. Scientists are confident in this.
An animal that large in modern oceans would inevitably show up in data. Whale carcasses bearing its distinctive bite marks, sonar readings, satellite tagging anomalies. None of that exists. But here's the thing about the ocean. We've only explored 5% of it. That's not a dramatic rhetorical device. That's the actual number. The Megalodon almost certainly doesn't still exist. Almost certainly. Now we go up a level in strangeness. The Bermuda Triangle. You know the name. The rough triangle formed by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico has been blamed for the disappearance of dozens of ships and aircraft over the decades. The mythology really took hold in the 1950s when multiple unexplained disappearances received wide press coverage. Vessels vanishing without distress signals, without wreckage, without survivors. Here's what the serious research actually shows. When you analyze the Bermuda Triangle statistically, it does not have a disproportionately high rate of disappearances compared to other heavily trafficked ocean regions. The area sees frequent tropical storms and hurricanes. The Gulf Stream, one of the most powerful ocean currents on Earth, flows directly through it and can scatter debris and wreckage rapidly. Many of the supposedly mysterious disappearances have documented explanations that simply didn't make it into the sensational reporting. And yet, the Bermuda Triangle is in this video because some of the cases, examined individually, are still genuinely puzzling. The Mary Celeste is one of the most legitimately strange stories in maritime history. In December 1872, a brigantine cargo ship was found sailing through the Atlantic Ocean, sails up, in reasonable navigating condition, with its cargo completely intact. The crew's personal belongings were still on board. Food was prepared. A meal appeared to have been recently started. There was no one on board, not a single person. The lifeboats were gone. There were no signs of struggle or violence. A few navigation instruments were found in odd places, suggesting something had interrupted a routine process very abruptly. But what? No bodies were ever recovered. No survivors ever came forward. No note, no explanation. Theories have ranged from the mundane, a gas leak from the alcohol cargo that caused a brief panic, leading the crew to abandon ship in the lifeboat, only to be lost at sea, to the genuinely bizarre. None has ever been confirmed. The Mary Celeste sank off the coast of Haiti during a hurricane in 1885, taking whatever secrets remained with her. In 1968, something happened that doesn't get talked about enough. 4 military submarines from different navies in different parts of the world disappeared within the same calendar year. The USS Scorpion, a United States Navy nuclear-powered submarine, vanished in the North Atlantic in May with 99 men aboard. No distress signal, no wreckage recovered at the time. The Soviet submarine K-129 disappeared in the Pacific in March. The Israeli submarine INS Dakar vanished in the Mediterranean in January. The French submarine Minerve went down in the Mediterranean in late January as well. 4 submarines, 1 year, different oceans, different navies.
Some were eventually located, wreckage found on the seafloor years or decades later. Official explanations involve structural failure, human error, and mechanical malfunction. But the coincidence of timing has kept the questions alive for decades. What was happening in the deep ocean in 1968? Now, let's talk about something that washed ashore and defied easy explanation. Globsters are unidentified organic masses, blobs of biological material, that appear on beaches and coastlines with no immediately obvious identity. They tend to be large, pale, fibrous, and deeply unsettling to look at. The Bermuda blob, actually two separate masses that appeared near the same area in 1988 and 1997, was described as a white, fibrous, almost rubbery substance with 5 limb-like protrusions. Testing eventually concluded it was likely whale blubber in an advanced state of decomposition, but it took years and proper laboratory analysis to reach that conclusion. There was also a case in Chile in 1965, a mass 6 meters long with a hide 6 millimeters thick, a layer of what appeared to be fat beneath it, solid flesh under that, and what looked like coarse gray hair covering the exterior. Samples were taken. Conclusions were contested. The ocean decomposes things in strange ways. What looks like an unknown creature often turns out to have a known explanation. Eventually. The word eventually is doing a lot of work in that sentence. We're going deeper now. Stay with me. The Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth. At its lowest point, a section called the Challenger Deep, it reaches approximately 11,034 meters below the surface. To put that in scale, if you dropped Mount Everest into the Mariana Trench, its peak would still be more than 2 kilometers underwater. The pressure at that depth is about 1,100 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. It is completely dark. The temperature hovers just above freezing. And yet, life exists there. Not just bacteria, actual multicellular life. Fish, shrimp, sea cucumbers, amphipods, species that have never been seen anywhere else, adapted to conditions that should, by any intuitive measure, be incompatible with life. During exploration of the trench, researchers found a United States military combat aircraft from World War II, believed to have crashed during a training exercise in 1944, sitting on the floor of the trench, waiting in the dark for nearly 80 years before anyone found it. We don't know what else is down there. We genuinely don't. Atlantis. The Greek philosopher Plato described it in detail, a powerful, technologically sophisticated civilization, governed by noble kings, wealthy beyond measure, with an advanced understanding of engineering and infrastructure. According to his account, written around 360 BC, the civilization became corrupt and arrogant, and as punishment, was swallowed by the ocean in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and flooding. Plato presented it as historical fact. Most scholars today treat it as allegory or literary invention. But a small, persistent community of researchers has spent decades trying to locate physical evidence, underwater formations, geological anomalies, anything that might suggest a real advanced civilization once existed somewhere that is now underwater. The honest answer is no definitive evidence has ever been found. But the reason Atlantis stays in conversations is that we know, as scientific fact, that sea levels have risen dramatically since the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago. Entire coastlines that once hosted human settlements are now underwater. Real places, not mythological ones. The question of whether any of those real submerged places could have inspired Plato's account has never been fully closed. In 2007, off the coast of Queensland, Australia, a sailing yacht called the Kaz 2 was found drifting in calm water with its engine running, its sails up, and its GPS system on. Everything was functioning normally. The 3 men who had set sail on it, the owner, his brother, and a friend, were gone. Rescue teams found a meal that had been partially prepared. Life jackets were still on board. The inflatable dinghy was still attached. There was no sign of struggle, no distress signal, no indication that anything had gone wrong. And yet 3 people had simply ceased to exist on a vessel that showed no signs of anything unusual.
The investigation turned up no confirmed explanation. The most likely theory, that one man fell overboard accidentally and the other two went in after him to help and were all swept away, is plausible but unconfirmed. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan, approximately 25 meters underwater, there are structures. Terraces, flat platforms, what appear to be carved columns, an arch-like feature that resembles an entrance or gateway. The whole complex stretches roughly 300 meters in length and rises about 25 meters from the seafloor.
The geological and archaeological community is genuinely divided on this. One side argues these are entirely natural formations, the result of the way sandstone fractures along natural fault lines, producing unusually regular shapes. The other side points to features that seem too geometrically precise to be purely accidental, and notes that during the last ice age, this entire area would have been above sea level, potentially accessible to human settlement. If the Yonaguni formations are man-made, they represent a civilization capable of monumental construction that we have no other record of. If they're natural, they are the most architecturally convincing natural accident ever discovered. Either way, they deserve to be in this conversation. In 2022, a research team exploring the Gulf of Mexico discovered the wreck of a 19th century whaling vessel at a depth of 450 meters. The ship was made of wood. Despite sitting on the ocean floor for an estimated 150 years or more, much of the hull remained relatively intact. The copper sheathing that had once protected its exterior had deteriorated significantly. Nothing above the waterline had survived. No flag, no identifying markings that could be confirmed, no significant remains of a crew. The only strong clue about what happened came from the condition of the wreck itself. The pattern of damage suggested the ship had been consumed by fire before sinking. Who owned it? Where was it going? What was it carrying? As of now, genuinely unknown. The island of Bermeja appeared on Spanish maps as far back as the 17th century. Small, triangular, roughly 80 kilometers off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico.
It was used as a navigational reference point and was significant enough that Mexico cited its location when establishing territorial water boundaries. In the 19th century, sailors began reporting that it wasn't there. Expeditions sent to find it found open ocean where the island should have been. Modern satellite surveys have confirmed there is nothing at those coordinates. No island, no reef, no geological formation. What happened to it? Possibilities it may never have actually existed. A cartographic error that was copied from map to map for over 2 centuries. It may have been real and subsequently submerged due to seismic activity, erosion, or rising sea levels. There is also a less scientific theory, noted mostly for how persistent it is, that the island's disappearance conveniently shifted certain maritime boundary calculations in ways that affected access to oil reserves, leading some to suggest its removal from maps was deliberate. There is no evidence for that last theory, but the island is unquestionably gone, and nobody has ever given a definitive explanation for where it went. In 1896, something washed ashore on a beach in Florida. It was approximately 6 meters long, roughly 2.5 meters wide, weighed an estimated 5 tons, was pinkish-white in color with a silvery sheen, and was composed of a dense, rubbery, fibrous substance, unlike anything anyone had seen before. A physician arrived the following day, the only person with scientific training who examined the specimen in person, and described it as the remains of a heavily decomposed large animal, possibly a type of giant octopus. Samples were taken. The creature became known as the St. Augustine monster.
Analysts debated it for decades, eventually concluding it was likely the remains of a giant squid. But the original physician's description didn't match that conclusion particularly well, and the specimen itself was never properly preserved. We'll never know what it actually was. The Turritopsis dornii is a small jellyfish found in the Mediterranean Sea and in oceans around the world, and it may be biologically immortal. When it is exposed to environmental stress, starvation, injury, extreme temperature change, instead of dying, it reverts.
its cells transform back into an earlier developmental state, and the animal essentially restarts its life cycle, growing from juvenile to adult again. This process can repeat indefinitely. In a laboratory with controlled conditions, no specimen of Turritopsis dohrnii has ever been confirmed to die of old age. They can be killed. Predators, disease, physical damage will do it, but aging alone as a cause of death does not appear to apply to them. Scientists studying this animal are working to understand the molecular mechanisms that allow this reversal. The implications for human medicine, for cancer research, for regenerative biology, for our understanding of aging itself are significant enough that multiple research groups around the world are actively focused on this single small jellyfish. The narwhal is a real animal, a whale that lives in Arctic waters and grows, from its upper jaw, a single spiraling tooth that can extend up to 3 meters in length. For centuries, narwhal tusks were sold as unicorn horns in European markets and were considered more valuable than gold. The tusk's actual biological function remains genuinely not fully understood.
Theories include sensory perception. The tusk may detect changes in water salinity, temperature, or pressure. It may play a role in male competition during mating season. It may serve a function in locating food. Recent high-resolution drone footage has shown male narwhals using their tusks to stun fish before eating them, a behavior that was hypothesized but never directly observed until very recently. Even so, the full picture is incomplete. An animal with a 3-meter spiraling ivory tooth growing out of its face, living under Arctic sea ice, whose primary biological feature we still don't fully understand. The ocean doesn't stop being strange just because something is technically classified. In 1808, on the island of Stronsay in the Orkney Islands of Scotland, a badly decomposed carcass washed ashore after a violent storm. Witnesses described a creature approximately 11 meters long, with a small head, a long neck, a large central body mass, and what appeared to be 3 pairs of limbs or fins. Its skin was described as smooth and grayish. When disturbed, bioluminescent, glowing material was said to emanate from parts of the body. Local naturalists attempted to classify it. Some believed it was a new species entirely. A sample was formally examined, and a scientific description was published, claiming it to be an entirely unknown creature, a sea serpent in practical terms. Later analysis suggested it was most likely a decomposed basking shark, which, when it breaks down, can produce a shape that looks startlingly unlike a shark and startlingly like a long-necked sea monster. But the original witnesses were not foolish people. They described what they saw carefully and consistently. The beast of Stronsay is officially a decomposed basking shark. But the fact that a rotting shark can produce something convincing enough to pass systematic naturalist examination says something worth sitting with. In 1999, researchers from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, monitoring seismic activity in the equatorial Atlantic near the Gulf of Guinea off the west coast of Africa, recorded something unexpected. A sound. Submarine, low frequency, described as a series of rhythmic rumbling impacts, not quite like anything in their existing catalog. They called it Julia. Like the Bloop before it, Julia generated serious scientific attention and a genuine lack of consensus about its origin. Proposed explanations have included geological activity, volcanic venting, the movement of tectonic plates, the release of gas pockets from the ocean floor. Biological explanations have also been proposed, large-scale migration of whales or coordinated behavior of deep-sea fish. Interference from human technology has been considered as well. Decades later, no single explanation has been confirmed. Julia remains on the list. In the Gulf of Mexico, in the Campeche Basin, there is a place informally known as the Jacuzzi of Despair. It is a brine pool, a lake within the ocean. Because brine is significantly denser than seawater, it doesn't mix. It sits at the bottom of the Gulf as a distinct body of liquid, with its own surface, its own currents, and its own shoreline. The water in the pool is 4 or 5 times saltier than the surrounding ocean. It is also anoxic.
It contains almost no dissolved oxygen, and it is saturated with hydrogen sulfide and methane. When marine animals enter it, they die almost immediately.
Crabs have been filmed walking into the edge of the pool and becoming paralyzed within seconds. Fish that swim too close lose consciousness. The name is not hyperbole. And yet, things live there. Tube worms, chemosynthetic bacteria, specialized shrimp. A tiny ecosystem built around conditions that are lethal to almost everything else on Earth. The methane in the pool is highly flammable. There are places on the floor of the Gulf of Mexico where the water is, technically, flammable. That sentence belongs in this video. On October 25, 1924, something washed ashore on a beach in South Africa. Witnesses described it as having a body covered in white, snow-like fur, a trunk resembling an elephant's, and a form that combined features of a large mammal with what appeared to be a fish-like tail structure. It was reportedly attacked and ultimately killed by a pair of orcas before coming ashore. The carcass remained on the beach for approximately 10 days. In that 10 days, no formally trained scientist examined it. No systematic measurements were taken. No samples were preserved properly. The creature became known as Trunco. It wasn't until 2010 that a photograph taken at the time was discovered in an archive. The photograph exists. The creature in it is visibly unusual, but without proper specimens or documentation, no classification has ever been confirmed. Trunco is almost certainly a decomposed whale or large marine animal. Almost certainly. But the specific description, the trunk, the fur, the behavior, has never been satisfactorily matched to any known species. Finally, and this one belongs at the very bottom of the iceberg, the New Jersey Shore shark attacks of 1916. Between July 1st and July 12th, 1916, 5 people were attacked by a shark or sharks along the New Jersey coastline. 4 of them died. One attack occurred inland, in a tidal creek connected to the ocean, a location that shark attacks essentially never happen. The summer of 1916 was characterized by a brutal heat wave that had driven thousands of people to the beaches. A simultaneous polio epidemic in the northeastern United States had added to the pressure on coastal resorts as families fled inland cities for what they believed was cleaner air near the water. The beaches were more crowded than they had ever been. The attacks caused a national panic. President Woodrow Wilson convened a cabinet meeting specifically to address them. New Jersey declared a shark emergency. Fishermen were paid bounties. The identity of the species responsible has been debated ever since. Great white shark and bull shark have both been seriously argued, and the question of whether one animal was responsible for all 5 incidents or multiple animals has never been definitively resolved. The attacks directly influenced American cultural attitudes toward sharks for generations. Some scholars have argued, fairly convincingly, that without the 1916 incidents, the cultural context that made Jaws possible, both the novel and the film, would not have existed in quite the same way. 4 deaths on a New Jersey beach in the summer of 1916 quietly shaped how an entire civilization thinks about the ocean. We've gone from the Bloop to immortal jellyfish to flammable ocean lakes to 4 submarines disappearing in a single year.
The ocean is larger, stranger, and more dangerous than almost any framing we put around it. And remember, we have only seen 5% of it. If any of this raised questions for you, drop them in the comments. And if you want more of this kind of thing, this is Obscura Files. Subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.